Hey, it's Miguel back here on the CRP, and we are looking at odds for boxing coming to us from Mexico this Saturday. And the bottom line is that we've got Eddie Hearn, Wilfred Sarlin, and Fernando Beltran, the promoters, getting together in Mexico for like a mixed card. The main event, WBC World Super Flyweight Champion Juan Francisco Estrada 39-3. Definitely one of the guys that's in the conversation in the top 10 pound for pound. And he takes on Dewayne Beamon. Beamon 16-1-1, coming to the heading to Mexico rather to try to take Estrada's belt in the main event spot. A couple other interesting fights on the card. And I'm joined by Anthony Scott Piatt, our boxing ace, to make some picks as the odds have been up for this card throughout the week here. How you doing, Anthony?
Hey, man, I'm doing great, Miguel. I just want to shout out to folks. We just did another wage rage on Kovalev. Check that out. And boxing been a little light the past couple of weeks, but we have Lomachenko next week. So we'll probably do a special on him, and we'll definitely do a wage rage. And we've got 4 fights right here to pick, and I'm happy to be here with you, brother.
Well, let's get right into it then. And go ahead and talk about that main event, which sees, as I stated, the WBC's world title at 115 pounds, Juan Francisco Estrada. I'm just excited because I think Estrada is definitely one of the better guys out there, pound for pound. You know, I don't know where he's on lists at this point, but I think he deserves a look. He's coming off a win over Wisakil Wang, who is Sor Rungvisai. Rungvisai, obviously the guy who vanquished Chocolatito Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And that win then hit the WBC's world title. And I think that put Estrada up a peg, you know. People who watched the 115-pounders knew about Estrada already. He'd been pursuing a rematch with Chocolatito for a long time, and the level of competition he's been facing at under 15 pounds has been extreme. How do you see this fight? The odds for it,
I do think Estrada is a great fighter. He's got a lot of speed. He's got some ring savvy. He's got a lot of fights. Let's look at that. I mean, he's 42 professional fights now, and he's by no means too old to keep going. He has lost those 3 times, one to Chocolatito, like you mentioned, which he did revenge, I believe. But basically, this Dewayne Beamon, 16-1-1, 11 of those are knockouts. His only loss was to Martin Tecuputla by a split decision. I know you could say that better than I. Tecuputla, split decision. But then he came back and beat him by unanimous decision in the rematch. Interesting thing with Dewayne Beamon, he is an American, but his last 7 fights have been in Mexico. So I think he's been picked up by these Mexican promoters and kind of brought south of the border to fight. First 9 in the USA, last 7 or 8 in Mexico. First maybe 10 were in the USA, actually. So at any rate, Juan Francisco Estrada by decision is my prediction. However, Beamon is not fought horrible guys at a plus 1,250 off of your $100. Now, it's definitely a dog watch and not a dog pick, because Estrada's going to have a bad night. Beamon's going to have a great night. But if you want to get a little tricky and you've got that $100 to sort of spare to hopefully get back $1,350, you know, it's something that could happen. Estrada is not infallible, but he's very, very good. So I expect him to win.
And I'm right there with you on this one. Beamon, 34. I think part of the reason why he's fought, in Mexico a great deal is the weight class at 115 pounds. Really not a robust weight class in the United States. So, in order to stay active, and if you look at it, obviously it's his last 7 fights. So at the point where, he was taking a step up in his career, he, was going to Mexico to fight guys there who had more experience and who at least are a little more developed in that country in the 115-pound class. I think that also has something to do with it. Estrada, as you said, so decorated, so long, the likes of Carlos Cuadras, Hernan Marquez. I mean, there are good fighters all throughout his resume, and he's been fighting at the top level for a long time. This is a step up for Beamon. Beamon is going to have to bring, what he brings, which is, a whole lot of athleticism. If he can get off, he may have a shot. 11 knockouts in his 16 wins. Probably a knockout is going to be, his best route to a win. Seeing him outbox and gain rounds against Estrada, I think that's a tall order.
I think you're right. I mean, Beamon does have an 8-pack. Let's put it that way. I mean, the guy is built. And when you're that small and slim, your muscle does pop out. It looks real good on him. And he's used to fighting these Mexican style and the Mexican fighters. So that's another positive for him. But he's going to have to make the best of every little positive he can because he is outmatched here. But again, a bad night for Estrada. Maybe his girlfriend breaks up with him on the way to the fight and his head's not in the game. Who knows? Let's see if Beamon can pull that one off. I wouldn't expect it, but I think it's going to be a decent little fight.
And heading down the card at 140 pounds, we've got the WBA's international title at play. And we've got Shakhram Giyasov, 8-0, taking on Darleys Perez. Perez, 34-4-2. Obviously, he's the veteran here. Giyasov, out of Uzbekistan. He's one of those guys with the wide amateur career who's trying to come along as quickly as possible. His last fight was against known quantity in the United States, Emmanuel Taylor. Taylor obviously on the, well on the decline of his career here. But in just the 7th fight, it shows you that Giyasov is trying to move quickly. In the terms of Perez, you've got a guy who's a veteran who's been around the block and has fought upper echelon guys. But here, Giyasov is entering a minus 1725 favorite. So you get the idea that Giyasov is still trajectorying, upwards,
That's
so,
right.
so to speak. And Perez is just, one stop on the elevator.
That's right. We look at a guy like Giyasov, and you think of some of the other longtime amateurs that go pro that come in ready to fight. Let's mention Loma again, since Lomachenko's fighting next week. It's a similar pattern to that. Giyasov has fought no one with a losing record. So yeah, he's only had he's 8-0, 6 knockouts, but they've all been guys with winning records. Whereas Perez built his record really against punching bags. It just wasn't his early record to get those first 25 wins or whatnot. He was fighting guys in their debut or that were 0-8 or 1-7, and just some really sad records. So you can't look at this and say, well, he's got so much more experience having almost 40 fights that's an advantage for Perez. It's really not, because he hasn't been fighting that level of competition. In fact, I would say his early pro fights probably gave him less experience and less something to carry along with him than Giyasov's amateur experience gave him. So with that said, Giyasov by knockout. I don't see any bet on this one.
And Perez, to his credit, has been fighting at the world title level over the course of the last few years. He's had a couple of draws with Anthony Crolla and Maurice Hooker. Crolla went on to avenge it and knock him out at one point. He's also fought the likes of Maxim Dadashev and Luke Campbell, losing both of those by TKO late in the fight. So he's going to give Giyasov a fight, and that's what they brought Perez in for. But at the end of the day, I think this one goes all one way. The writing is on the wall, so to speak. So we'll see how that one goes on Saturday. But no official pick on that fight. We've got, moving down the card, super welterweight action, 154-pounders. Liam Smith, 27-2-1, taking on Mario Alberto Lozano. Lozano, 33-9. And, notable here, as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, Eddie Hearn, one of the promoters officially for the card. So I think the Brits are here, but not in fights where they're actually going to, be challenged. I think these are more highlight fights for him. Smith coming off a good win against Sam Eggington, but a loss to Jaime Munguia prior to that, so I would consider this getting back on the winning track for Liam Smith. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I think you're right. You're onto something about this English showcase, if you will, with they're bringing him in. Really not trying to test him too hard. You mentioned he lost to Jaime Munguia and also Canelo Alvarez. So these are two pretty good fighters. So I don't hold that against Liam with his he's looking at about 30 fights now. They've got him at a negative 4,050. So there's no reason to bet on Liam whatsoever, folks. Again, that's at a negative 4,050. You'd have to bet $4,050 and you'd win 100 back. So you get 4,150, or you'd lose your 4,000. No reason to bet on this fight unless you wanted to take Lozano. But then we look at Lozano, 33-9. He's only been knocked out once. That is something to keep in mind. He's only been knocked out once. But he lost 4 in a row at one point, just about 3 or 4 fights ago. He was on a 4 loss streak, and they weren't stellar opponents. So I'm going to go with, and I forgot to put this one in your notes for you, but I'm going with Smith, and I'm going to go with it by decision because Lozano is a hard fella to knock out. But having said that, it'll just be a showcase. It's a perfect fight for Smith to break into a new audience. Again, folks, this is on the DAZN, and then he's down in Mexico. So he's got the Mexican fans that'll see him. He's got the folks that subscribe to the DAZN that'll see him. And I think they'll get to see him for the whole 10 rounds, put on a bit of a clinic.
And as we move to the last fight that we'll review here, comes to us in the super featherweight division, and it's 10 rounds of action between Jono Carroll and Carroll taking on the veteran Eleazar Valenzuela, and Carroll comes in a minus 4,500 favorite. Much the same story as Liam Smith. You got to look at the fact that you got Carroll coming off a loss to Tevin Farmer in a world title fight, where Carroll really acquitted himself very well. And I think, in his own mind, and some of the observers and stuff, he did better than the judges gave him credit for in that fight at 117, 110. He was closer, and put up a good fight with Farmer there. He needs a bounce-back win after that, and I think Eleazar Valenzuela fits the bill. And I think, you're looking at the fact that his promoter, a British promoter, is on the card as, one of the official promoters here. So somebody's taking care of him here and giving him a feature spot. Jono Carroll, based on his fight with Tevin Farmer, is a guy I wanted to see again. So, but I don't expect him to stumble or really be challenged in this one.
Yeah, you're right. That is his only loss, in fact, is to Tevin Farmer. Pretty good up-and-comer. Valenzuela here, 20-11. Only 2 of them knockouts, and that's fairly important. He's lost 11 times and only been knocked out twice. So, in other words, if there were an over-under on this, again, kind of like the last fight, I think you're going to see a lot of rounds of boxing on this card. I think this one's going to go the distance as well. If you look at Jono Carroll, fun fighter to watch, 16-1-1, only 3 knockouts in 18 fights. So, being featherweights and whatnot, that's not that surprising. But again, probably a bit of a clinic on this one. I think Valenzuela is basically sort of a lamb to the slaughter, but I don't see a knockout happening. Carroll by decision.
All right, and that's this Saturday, coming to us from Mexico and on the DAZN, so you have to check your local listings for start times there. And we've got a card featuring world title action at the top of the card, and that is Jose Estrada defending his WBC World Super Flyweight title against Dewayne Beamon. 3 other fights on the card getting attention from the sport books, and I've been joined by our boxing ace, Anthony Scott Piatt, to make picks for Saturday's fights. Take a peek, and we will definitely check in after the fights. Anthony, any closing words?
It's been a pleasure, Miguel, as always. I'm glad we had some fights to call this week, and look forward to next week with Lomachenko. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Check us Facebook, YouTube, subscribe, share, and like. Do all the good stuff. Help us out. We appreciate it.
Let me close off with one quick question. As a DAZN subscriber, are you still happy with the service? Everything's going good? Because it's kind of falling. You know, the Canelo fight is gone. You know, come and gone. We've gotten a couple of other fights. People are looking forward to seeing Tyson Fury. Yep. I'm sorry, not Tyson Fury. Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua on the zone. And that sort of stuff. So they still have some big things, but they sort of also seem to have cooled off. But are you still happy with the subscription, or have you had trouble, or how's it going?
I'm still happy with it. I mean, look, it's cheap enough at that $10 a month, or depending on what package you get, between 12 and 15 a month. I'm still happy with it. They're still bringing good fights. Yes, it's not as packed recently, but let's not forget, you know, Cage Rage does a lot of MMA as well. And whereas I don't call it, Bellator is on there. So I found myself watching some Bellator that I would never pay, you know, pay-per-view for or whatnot, but I'm watching it. And they've got soccer and they've got some other sports on there. So it's kind of you know, it really reminds me of ESPN back in the 80s, when you might turn it on and see a rugby match or even a cricket match, something like that, late at night especially. They were sort of like MTV when they just played music. ESPN used to just play sports rather than sort of talk about it 24/7, which is, you know, part of the gig too. Here we are. But I do like the zone because I can go on it and find something. On any given day, there's something going on. Yeah, I want some more big title fights. Canelo, AJ, we're going to see some of that come in. And I think Fury will end up on there too at one point, possibly. There's been a lot of talk with him possibly getting involved with it. We'll see how that goes. But yes, bottom line, I'm still happy with the zone. I do want them to bring it and make sure that they keep enough people happy to keep the business model intact. But I can't complain about like this fight card we just looking at right here. This is something that I know I can tune into. I don't have to put up with commercials. You know, I don't have any of that extra stuff. It's just a straight closed circuit broadcast straight to me. And so, yeah, I still appreciate it. Absolutely.
Well, that's good to hear and good to catch up on you. And yes, you want to check the local listings for start times. Estrada versus Beamon, a solid card coming to us on DAZN from Hermosillo, Mexico this Saturday.